Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents Charming a Texas Prince by Katie Lane. Narrated by Holly Adams. Chapter 1. She would never admit it, and if asked, Mystic Twilight Malone would flat out deny that the first Wednesday was her favorite day of the month. It was just a day like any other day. She got up at exactly 6:15. She did yoga for 30 minutes. She meditated for 10 more. Then she showered and got dressed. If she took a little extra time picking out her clothes or fixing her hair or applying her makeup, she didn't give it a thought. It was part of her job to look nice for her clients. A hairstylist needed to have style. Once she was satisfied with the reflection in her mirror, she'd go into the kitchen and make hot tea for her grandmother. There was a specific routine her grandmother had taught her to make the perfect cup of tea. Always use filtered water and loose tea leaves, and always let the tea steep for 5 minutes. After pouring water over the infuser filled with leaves, Mystic would set the timer on her smartwatch. While waiting, she'd toast an English muffin lightly brown and spread butter into every nook and cranny. By that time, her alarm would go off, and she would remove the tea infuser and then carry the cup and the muffin to the small 2-person table in the breakfast nook where she would leave it for her grandmother. Mystic didn't like tea or English muffins. She usually just made herself a cup of black coffee, except on the first Wednesday of every month. On those days, she just sat at the table and stared out the window, waiting for the clock to tick off time. For some reason, the first Wednesday always turned out to be gorgeous weather. The sun seemed to shine brighter, the rain fell lovelier, the hailstones danced in the grass higher. Nothing that happened that day could ruin her good mood. It didn't matter if her beauty supply shipment didn't come in, or a client didn't show up for their appointment, or her grandmother had caused another problem with the townsfolk of Kirst. Regardless of what happened, the first Wednesday of every month always turned out to be a great day. Even if her grandmother woke up spouting predictions. "Tornadoes coming." Mystic continued watching the hummingbirds sipping from the feeder that hung outside the window. Was it her imagination, or were the 2 birds kissing after every drink? She smiled at the thought of kissing hummingbirds. It must be the first Wednesday. Mystic turned to her grandmother. "What?" "Nothing." Hester sat down at the table. She was a tall, attractive woman with long silver hair that she refused to let Mystic cut, no matter how much Mystic pleaded. She also refused to wear any color but black, no matter how many brightly colored clothes Mystic gave her for her birthdays and Christmases. The silver hair and black flowing dresses and skirts only added to the townsfolk belief that Hester Malone was a witch, and her grandmother's career choice didn't help. Mystic cringed every time she saw the neon sign hanging in the front window of their house. Fortune-telling and palm reading. Like her ancestors before her, Hester was the town psychic. She read palms and tarot cards and crystal balls and the amethyst hanging from the chain around her neck. If her predictions of doom and gloom weren't accurate 80% of the time, people might not believe she was a witch. But Hester was rarely wrong. "Did you hear me?" Her grandmother picked up her favorite tea mug with the picture of Baby Yoda and the words "Yoda Best Psychic" beneath. "A tornado is coming." "I heard you." Mystic glanced out the window at the beautiful September day. "But not only is it a gorgeous day, tornado season for Texas is usually May and early June." Hester added 4 cubes of sugar to her tea and stirred it 6 times one way and 4 times the other before setting the spoon on the right of her cup. "The tornadoes in my dream don't always represent actual tornadoes. You should know that by now, granddaughter." Mystic more than knew it. Hester hadn't just taught her how to make tea. She'd taught her everything about the psychic world. More than Mystic wanted to know. Her grandmother's dreams, visions, and other psychic abilities had caused Mystic nothing but trouble and alienation from the townsfolk. What Hester viewed as a gift, Mystic viewed as a curse. She wasn't about to give her grandmother validation by entering into a conversation about some dream she had. "I don't want to talk about your dreams, Hessie. That's something you should know by now." Hester slammed her fist on the table, making her tea mug jump. "This isn't a joke, Mystic Twilight. Something bad is going to happen to you. I know it." "How do you know it?" "You told me yourself that Malones can't read each other's fortunes or see the future of any blood relative." "The dream didn't go into detail. It was just a warning. A serious warning." Tears entered her violet eyes that Mystic had inherited. "I can't lose you like I lost your mama." The tears and the mention of Aurora made Mystic realize how upset her grandmother was by the dream. Hester rarely cried, and even more rarely talked about her only daughter who had disappeared from both their lives when Mystic was only 2 years old. Mystic reached across the table and took Hester's hand. "Okay, I'm listening. What kind of tornado is coming?" Hester stroked the amethyst crystal around her neck. "That's just it. I don't know if it's literal or metaphorical. All I saw in my dream was a tornado headed straight for you. Your hair was whipping around your face and you were scared. More scared than I've ever seen you." She squeezed her grandmother's hand. "If it's an actual tornado, I couldn't work anywhere better than my basement salon. If it's a sign of something that's going to happen in my life, I'll just have to deal with it when it hits." Hester's eyes grew even more concerned. "That's the problem. You never deal with issues. You just hide from them, just like your mama did." "My mama didn't hide. She ran. I'm not a runner, Hessie." If she had been, she would have left a long time ago. Leaving would have made her life so much easier. But she couldn't bring herself to leave Hester. As much as her grandmother annoyed her, Mystic loved her and owed her for being there when her mother hadn't been. "I promise I'll keep my eyes open and take all the precautions I need to if a tornado, real or otherwise, shows up in my life." "And you'll keep me posted on anything unusual that happens?" Hester asked. "I mean it, Mystic. I can't help you if you continue to keep secrets from me." She took note of the "continue," but refused to acknowledge it. She had kept a secret from her grandmother and everyone else in town. "I'll keep you posted." She added a silent amendment. "If it's something I think you need to know." She got up. "Now stop worrying. I'm going to be fine." "I don't want you to be fine. I want you to be happy." "I am happy." Hester shook her head. "You can fool the townsfolk, but you can't fool me. You haven't been truly happy since high school. Something happened back then, something that took your sparkle away. If there wasn't a psychic block with my own family members, I would have known what it was, and I could have helped you." She hesitated. "I still can, if you'd tell me." Mystic thanked God every day for the family psychic block. Hester didn't need to know what had happened. She would be thrilled and spread the news around town, which would only cause more problems for Mystic. "There's nothing to tell." She brushed a kiss on Hester's cheek before she grabbed an apple from the bowl on the counter and headed out the front door. As she was coming down the porch steps, her cat Wish popped out from beneath the azaleas and greeted her with a loud meow. "There you are," she said as she leaned down to stroke the cat's sleek black fur. "Out carousing again last night, were you?" Mystic had sworn she would never get another cat after Magic, the black cat her grandmother had given her on her 10th birthday, had died. Not only did she not want to feel the sharp pain of loss again, but she also didn't want to add to the townsfolk belief that the Malone women were witches. But then Wish had shown up on her doorstep a few months back, and she'd been unable to turn the cute little solid black kitten away. "Come on," she said. "I'll get you some breakfast." The cat daintily followed behind her as Mystic headed down the steps to the basement door. Stepping into the salon always filled Mystic with pride. She had designed every aspect of the salon herself. She'd picked out the striped lavender wallpaper and cushioned purple salon chairs and retro black and white checkered tile and the gleaming black shampoo bowls and the shiny chrome fixtures and the lush white lobby couch and each fuzzy throw pillow. She loved everything about the salon. This was her haven, the place where she wasn't the granddaughter of the town fortune teller and palm reader, or the poor parentless Malone girl whose daddy hadn't acknowledged her and whose mama had run off and left her. Here, she was just a prominent businesswoman who had worked hard to get the town's respect. She was damn proud of her accomplishments. After feeding Wish, she started getting the salon open for business. She set up the appointment software on the computer and arranged the magazines on the coffee table in front of the lobby couch. She pulled the clean towels out of the dryer and folded them before stacking them back in the cupboards over the shampoo bowls. And she swept the floor for any hair she might have missed the night before. Once everything was ready, she put away the broom and dustpan and glanced at the clock on the wall. 9:07 a.m. She smiled. Her first appointment on the first Wednesday of every month was always late. She walked to the mirror at her station and reapplied her favorite brand of red lipstick before she fluffed her short black hair and brushed a fleck of mascara from beneath her eye. She wasn't the fairest one of all, but she would do. When the bell over the door jingled, her heart rate accelerated. She ignored her heart, just like she would continue to ignore it for the next hour. She turned from the mirror as her morning appointment strode in. He wore the light blue T-shirt with the Austin Brew Pub logo on the front and his favorite pair of faded Wranglers with the worn spot on the right back pocket. His straw cowboy hat was new. His sister Delaney's goat Carl had munched on the last one, and the one before that, and the one before that. Beneath the curved brim, his familiar blue eyes, a deeper shade of the robin's eggs they'd found together one summer when they had been 7, twinkled back at her. "Hey, Missy." She placed a hand on her hip in faked exasperation. "You're late again, Buck Kingman." "Sorry. Big Brother called me into his office and got after me for being forgetful." He hooked his cowboy hat on the coat rack before he walked over and handed her a takeout cup. "But I didn't forget your coffee." She took a sip and sighed. "Then you're forgiven." "You are so easy, miss." He laughed as he folded his tall frame into the salon chair at her station. "I wish my brother was so easy to appease." Paying absolutely no attention to the way his muscled body filled the chair, Mystic set down her coffee at her station and took a purple plastic cape from a drawer. She shook it out before placing it around Buck's broad shoulders. The sight of the rough-and-tough cowboy in a purple cape always made her smile. "So, what did you forget this time?" she asked. Buck had always been disorganized and forgetful. He was lucky he had 4 older siblings to keep him on track. And Mystic. "I told you to start using your cell phone calendar to give you reminder alerts." I know. But I never had to remember to schedule the hay crew. One of my siblings always did that. Now, suddenly, it's my job." She snapped the cape around his neck, ignoring the feel of the warm skin on the back of his neck. "Your sisters and brothers have other responsibilities now, like their new spouses." Buck scowled. "Exactly." "It sounds like you're a little jealous." "Hell yeah, I'm jealous. I'm the one in the family who always wanted to get married, and now everyone is married but me. It doesn't seem fair." Since they'd been in high school, the only thing Buck had ever dreamed about was getting married and having a bunch of kids. At one time, Mystic had wanted the same thing. Now she was quite happy being a single, prosperous businesswoman. Quite happy. "Poor Buck," she said, as she picked up a comb from her station. "You live in a castle on a hill and can have any woman in town you want, but it's still not enough." He shot her an annoyed look. "I should have known I wouldn't get any sympathy from you. Not a drop." Mystic ran the comb through his hair. It was the color of moonlight, and in bright sunlight it almost looked like he wore a glowing halo. But she knew for a fact Buck was no angel. At 8, he'd almost burned the barn down due to his infatuation with matches and fire. At 13, he'd stolen Wolf's girly magazines and barricaded himself in the treehouse for hours. At 15, he'd written the answers to his history final on the inside of his arm. At 17, he'd had sex with Ginny Myers in her bedroom while her parents were downstairs watching The Big Bang Theory. As an adult, he drank, gambled, cussed, and fought when provoked, and continued to entertain women in their bedrooms. No, Buck wasn't an angel, but he was a kind, loyal man who would make some woman a great husband. Just not her. She stopped combing his hair and stepped back. "So, you want the same cut as always, or would you like to try something daring?" She cocked her head and sent him a sassy look in the mirror. "Maybe a mullet? Or I could shave the words 'Marry me' in the back." Buck laughed. He had the best laugh, a chortle mixed with a loud guffaw. "If you think it would help, shave away." "That desperate, are you?" His laughter quickly died, and a sadness entered his blue eyes. "Why can't I find love, miss? All my siblings have found it, and they weren't even looking. I've been looking for years, and it's completely avoided me." His gaze held her in its grip. "Am I that ugly?" Ugly? Buck Kingman was about as far from ugly as a man could get. It wasn't just his blonde hair that sprouted from his head like a field of moonlit wheat, or his straight nose without one bump or freckle to mar it, or his wide mouth with 2 even twin peaks on top and a plump, full lip on the bottom he chewed on when he got worried, or his robin's egg blue eyes with their long golden lashes, or the cute little dimple in his left cheek that came out when he smiled his lopsided grin. It was the combination of all those features wrapped in a muscled cowboy's body that made all the women in town breathless, including her. She had just learned to regulate her breathing when he was around. She playfully tapped him on the head with the comb. "You're not so ugly, Buckaroo. I'm sure some woman somewhere will find you cute enough to fall head over boots in love with you. Now let's get your hair washed. I've got other clients today." "Gee, thanks for the pep talk, miss," he said sarcastically as he got up from the chair and followed her to the shampoo bowl. Once he had reclined in the chair with his head positioned in the curve of the sink, she picked up the sprayer and wet his hair before applying a liberal amount of conditioning shampoo. As soon as she slid her fingers into his hair and started to massage his scalp, his eyes slid closed, like they always did. She glanced at the clock. This was her moment. The one moment once a month that she let down her guard. The one moment when she stepped across the line drawn in the sand of her heart and let herself feel. As her fingers stroked through Buck's sudsy strands, her heart quickened and her breath grew uneven, and she pretended for a second they were different people. 2 strangers with no past and no history, 2 strangers who could start all over and, maybe this time, find love. She only gave herself the minute, no more and no less. She felt like a minute wasn't too much to ask for. Once it was up, she removed her fingers and rinsed the shampoo. By the time Buck opened his eyes, all he saw was his smiling best friend. Chapter 2. A haircut always made things feel right in Buck's world. Today was no different. He'd walked into the salon feeling disheartened about his life, and as he watched Mystic take a snip of his hair before her fingers brushed against his scalp to lift another strand, he felt much better. She was right. There was bound to be some woman somewhere who would be his perfect match. An outdoorsy woman who loved riding horses and fishing. A fun-loving woman who enjoyed a good joke, good beer, and good conversation. An independent woman who would understand the long hours a ranch owner worked and have her own things that kept her busy. An honest woman who wouldn't keep secrets from him. These were the things he was looking for in a woman, the things he was having trouble finding. If they were fun-loving, they didn't understand his long work hours. If they understood his long work hours, they didn't enjoy heading to Nasty Jack's bar for a little drinking and some two-stepping. If they liked to party, they weren't looking for a serious relationship. Maybe he was being too picky. Maybe he needed to drop some of his requirements and just have one. She couldn't keep secrets. He couldn't live with a woman who didn't share her thoughts and feelings. As far as he was concerned, secrets were what killed his mama, and he'd have none of those in his marriage. His gaze settled on Mystic's heart-shaped face in the mirror, a face he knew as well as his own. Short feathered hair as black as raven wings, a button nose tilted just a tad at the end, high cheekbones that rarely blushed, bowed lips that pursed when she was concentrating, like now, and pouted when she was mad. A pointy chin with a tiny scar beneath that she'd gotten from falling down the stairs of the Kingman treehouse while chasing Buck. What had she been mad about? He couldn't remember now. But he did remember how scared he'd been when he saw the blood dripping onto her shirt. He'd carried her all the way back to the house. It hadn't been easy. At 10, she'd been the same size as he was. She wasn't the same size as he was anymore. The top of her head barely reached his chin, and that was while wearing the high-heeled boots she loved. She wore some today with low shanks that barely covered her ankles. The rest of her legs were bare all the way to the hem of her short, flowered dress. She had nice legs for a petite girl. They were well-shaped and toned from riding horses. Not that she rode any more. She spent most of her time working at the salon. It was annoying. He missed riding with Mystic. He missed glancing over and seeing her face crinkled with laughter as they raced over Kingman land. He missed fishing with her at the pond and lazing away the last days of summer beneath the big Texas sky. He just missed her. "You should come to the ranch this afternoon and we'll go riding," he said abruptly. Mystic's hands stilled above his head as their gazes caught in the mirror. Her eyes were the most unusual color, a mixture of deep blue bonnet and the lilacs that grew in the garden on the ranch. She looked away and continued snipping. "Sorry, I have to work late tonight." "Then come Sunday after church." "There's a potluck after church, and I promised Pastor Chance that I'd help serve." "Then Monday. You don't open the salon on Mondays." She set her scissors on the counter and picked up the electric trimmer. "That's my day to do all my accounting and organizing." He sighed. "I know you've said you aren't avoiding me, miss, but this sure feels like avoidance." "I have a business to run, Buck, and unlike you, I don't have 4 siblings to fall back on." She switched on the trimmers and tipped his head forward a little too forcefully. But he couldn't blame her for being annoyed. It wasn't fair that Mystic didn't have anyone to fall back on except her grandmother. It was hard to put much trust in a woman who spent her days reading tea leaves, tarot cards, and palms. While Hester Malone made money on her fortune-telling business, it wasn't enough to pay the bills and put food on the table. Mystic did that. and had done it ever since she'd been old enough to get a job. Buck, on the other hand, had never had to shoulder the responsibility of taking care of his family, or even himself. That job had fallen to his oldest brother, Stetson, and his oldest sister, Adeline, after their mother and father had passed away. It was Stetson and Adeline who had carried the weight of keeping the ranch going and their 3 teenage siblings out of trouble. It hadn't been an easy job. Wolf, Delaney, and Buck were rowdy, outspoken, and stubborn. Being owners of the wealthiest ranch in the county made the Kingman kids the princes and princesses of Cursed. As far as the townsfolk were concerned, they could do no wrong, even when they did wrong. Mystic hadn't been so lucky. As the fortune-teller's granddaughter, she was seen as more of a witch than a princess, even when she had no psychic powers at all and spent any free time she had giving back to the town by helping out at the church and serving as president of the Cursed Ladies Auxiliary Club. It wasn't fair. Not fair at all. When Mystic finished trimming his neck, Buck lifted his head and caught her violet eyes in the mirror. "You can fall back on me, Missy." For one brief, breath-halting moment, their gazes held. Then she looked away and laughed. "Doubtful. You didn't even catch me when I stumbled in my new high heels at the freshman dance. You let me fall right on my butt while you ogled Susie Reed. Okay, so that was my bad, but you can't blame me for staring at Susie. Every boy at the dance was distracted by the low-cut dress she wore." She took off the cape and stood back. "You're all done." He barely glanced in the mirror as he got to his feet. "Perfect as usual." He pulled out his wallet, even though he knew Mystic wouldn't let him pay. "Put that right back in your pocket. What are friends for if not to give you a free haircut?" She picked up a shiny red apple from her station and held it out. "And I brought you an apple from our tree. We have a bumper crop this year." He hesitated. "I seem to remember this scenario from somewhere. An offered apple from a—" "Don't even go there, buckaroo." She pulled the apple back. "If you don't want it, I want it." He grabbed the apple and took a bite. "A little poison never hurt anyone." Like always, when his haircut was over, he wanted to prolong their time together. But Mystic glanced at the clock, and he knew his time was up. He wanted to say something that would fix what had been broken between them. Except he didn't know what was broken, or how it had gotten broken. All he knew was that somewhere along the way they'd lost the close connection they'd once had. The door opened, and Mildred Pike, who worked at Cursed Market, hurried in. "Hey, y'all. Sorry I showed up without an appointment, Mystic, but I was hoping you could squeeze me in." She held up her long orange claws. "I broke a nail and need it fixed before my date with Jake tonight." "Jake Taylor?" Mystic asked. Mildred smiled widely and nodded. "I know. I can't believe that handsome cowboy asked me out. But he did. He just waltzed right up to my cash register with a 6-pack of beer, and while I was checking him out, he asked if I wanted to hang out with him tonight." For some reason, Mystic didn't look happy about the news. "Are you sure you want to go out with Jake, Mildred? I think he's still in love with Amy." Mildred shook her head. "Oh, no. They broke up months ago, and Amy's dating Stu Walker. That doesn't mean Jake is over her, or she is over him." Mildred stared at her. "What makes you think that? Did Amy say something to you?" "Well, no, but—" Mystic let the sentence drift off before she shook her head. "You're right. If they broke up, they probably aren't still in love. Now let's get that nail fixed for your big date." She glanced at Buck. "See you next month, Buck." The thought that he wouldn't get to see her for an entire month didn't sit well with him. Or maybe what didn't sit well was her acting like that was okay. There was a time they had seen each other every day. Now he was lucky if he saw her once a week, and he was always the one who had to make the effort. It was starting to really annoy him. But, as always, He hid his anger and grabbed his hat off the rack and pulled it on. "See you, Missy. Enjoy your date."
Sample complete. Ready to continue?